You begin the journey of faith hearing promises that sound clear and irresistible. You're told that with God you'll have constant peace, that decisions will become easier, that His presence will feel almost tangible in everyday life. People talk about quick answers, open doors, obvious signs, and direction without so much doubt. Without realizing it, you build the idea that faith means living spiritually stable, emotionally secure, internally resolved. So you believe. You pray. You get involved. You try to do everything right. But real life keeps happening. The bills still come. Family conflicts don't magically disappear. Anxiety doesn't vanish overnight. Doubts don't evaporate just because you now believe. You pray for direction and still feel confused. Pray for peace and still face restless nights. Pray for answers and find waiting. And then a quiet frustration is born, the kind almost no one admits out loud. It's not rebellion. It's not a desire to walk away from God. It's just the feeling that your experience doesn't match the advertisement. You look at church services, testimonies, videos, and it seems like everyone else is living a vibrant faith, full of certainty and powerful experiences. Meanwhile, your spiritual routine feels too ordinary, too silent, too human. Little by little, a dangerous thought shows up. Maybe the problem is me. Maybe I'm not believing enough. Maybe I'm not praying the right way. Maybe God does for others what He doesn't do for me. But here's something few people explain clearly. This version of faith, always intense, always clear, always emotionally rewarding, is shaped far more by modern religious culture than by the biblical portrait of life with God. Scripture is full of people who believed, obeyed, and still lived through long seasons of uncertainty. Nehemiah rebuilt walls under constant threat. Esther risked her life with no guarantee of deliverance. John the Baptist, who prepared the way for Jesus, ended his days in prison full of unanswered questions. None of these stories look like faith as constant comfort. They look like tension, risk, waiting, and decisions made without total control of the outcome. But that doesn't turn easily into a slogan. It doesn't fit neatly into motivational phrases. It doesn't energize a crowd in the same way. So many people enter faith expecting constant relief, and instead find a path that demands perseverance, trust in the dark, and faithfulness even without immediate emotional reward. The clash between expectation and reality starts wearing them down inside. Maybe the problem isn't your faith, but the version of faith you were taught. When you open the Bible without the filter of ready-made phrases, the picture looks very different from the emotionally stable, always resolved faith many people imagine. What you find in its pages are not spiritual heroes living in a straight line of peace and certainty. You find people dealing with real fear, God's silence, confusing decisions, and long stretches of not understanding what is happening. Abraham is called to leave his land with a huge promise in his hands, yet he spends years without seeing it fulfilled. More than once, everything around him seems to contradict what God said. Time passes, his body ages, human logic screams that it won't happen. The promise exists. Emotional clarity does not. David, known as a man after God's own heart, writes psalms that sound like the cries of someone on the edge of exhaustion. How long, Lord? Psalm 13. That's not an isolated line. It's the voice of someone who keeps talking to God even when he feels unheard. Faith there is not the absence of anguish. It is conversation sustained in the middle of it. Elijah faces prophets, prays, and sees fire fall from heaven, one of the most intense spiritual moments in Scripture. Shortly after, he runs in fear, hides in the wilderness, and asks to die, 1 Kings 19. The same man who witnessed a public miracle collapses emotionally. Faith didn't prevent the exhaustion. It didn't block the crisis. It existed alongside it. Job may be the most uncomfortable example. He loses everything, asks hard questions, and goes through chapter after chapter without a direct answer from God. Heaven seems silent while he tries to make sense of his life. Still, in the middle of pain and confusion, he doesn't completely sever the relationship. He questions, laments, protests, but keeps speaking to God. That too is biblical faith. Even the disciples walk physically with Jesus and still live with fear and confusion. During the storm, they panic, convinced they're going to die, Mark 4. After so much time with him, they still don't understand many things. Proximity does not automatically eliminate insecurity. The Bible does not hide spiritual silence. It does not hide doubt. It does not hide the feeling of absence. It shows that faith and difficult emotions often occupy the same heart at the same time. The problem is that we've learned to assume that if there is fear, there is no faith. If there is doubt, faith has failed. If there is silence, God has withdrawn. But the biblical text dismantles that logic. It shows people who kept walking with God while feeling small, confused, and at times abandoned. Real faith does not appear as constant euphoria. It appears as perseverance in the middle of instability. That normalizes something many people experience today but think is an exception. Real faith does not begin when everything makes sense. There is a part of faith that is rarely explained clearly, and when it's ignored, many people start doubting their own spiritual journey unnecessarily. The hidden part is simple, but uncomfortable. Faith is not a feeling. We've learned to measure spiritual life by what we feel. If we feel peace, we think we're close to God. If we feel joy, we assume our faith is strong. If we feel empty, we conclude something is wrong. But that ruler is emotional, and emotion is one of the most unstable parts of human experience. Emotions change with exhaustion, stress, sleep, circumstances, and seasons of life. Some days you wake up light for no clear reason. Other days you wake up heavy even when nothing went wrong. If faith depended on constant feelings, it would rise and fall at the same pace as your mood, and that's not how the Bible describes it. Spiritual sensation is not a reliable thermometer. David writes psalms where he feels forgotten by God, and others where he overflows with joy. His relationship with God continues in both scenarios. The presence of faith is not proven by emotional stability, but by the direction he keeps, even when his heart is at war. Job goes through one of the darkest periods in Scripture. He is not calm the whole time. He laments, questions, suffers deeply. At no point is his faith portrayed as an emotionally pleasant experience. Yet he keeps addressing God. The relationship is not sustained by feeling, it is sustained by remaining. The disciples also dismantle the idea that faith means feeling strong all the time. They walk with Jesus, see miracles, hear direct teaching, and still feel fear, doubt, insecurity. Peter walks on water and then sinks, overcome by fear. His emotional state changes in seconds. Faith is not described as a continuous emotional high, but as a bond being formed through ups and downs. We were taught to seek spiritual euphoria as proof that everything is fine. But the Bible gives far more emphasis to perseverance than to emotional intensity. Remaining in prayer when you feel nothing. Remaining obedient when there is no excitement. Remaining trusting when there are no clear signs. That is far less flashy than intense experiences, but far more common in Scripture. When you reduce faith to feeling, you create a dangerous cycle. On good days you think you're spiritual, on dry days you think you're a failure. But those dry days do not automatically mean absence of faith. Often, they are the setting where faith is learning to depend less on emotional stimulation and becoming deeper, more sober, more rooted. Biblical faith is not living with constant goosebumps. It is continuing to walk in the same direction even after the feeling fades. If feeling were essential, most of the faithful people in the Bible would have failed. There's a clear reason almost no one speaks openly about this drier, quieter side of faith. It doesn't motivate in the short term, it matures in the long term. And maturity is not easy to communicate in a world addicted to quick stimulation. Much of modern religious discourse has taken on a motivational tone. It talks about victory, progress, achievement, answers, miracles, breakthroughs. And yes, the Bible has moments like that. The problem is when this becomes the center of the message, and everything involving waiting, silence, confusion, and spiritual dryness is pushed to the margins. Because that doesn't sell. Silence doesn't excite. Waiting doesn't earn applause. Dryness doesn't fill auditoriums. It's much easier to keep people engaged by promising intense experiences than by preparing hearts for seasons when God seems distant, emotions weaken, and answers take time. But when that part isn't taught, those who start living it think something is wrong with them. They keep praying, but feel less. Keep going to church, but without the excitement they once had. Keep trying to be faithful, but with an inner tiredness they can't explain. Since they've only heard of faith as enthusiasm, they conclude, I'm growing cold. But often it's not coldness. It's transition. In the Bible, moments of silence and apparent absence did not automatically mean abandonment. Joseph spends years forgotten in prison before seeing any sign of his dreams fulfilled. David is anointed king and then lives a long season on the run, not understanding God's timing. The disciples get into a boat with Jesus, face a storm, and he is sleeping, present, but apparently silent. These phases were not punishment for lack of faith. They were part of forming a faith that didn't depend on constant stimulation. When this isn't explained, unnecessary guilt grows. People who are actually growing deeper roots start comparing themselves to emotionally charged testimonies and conclude they are falling behind. But roots grow downward, in the dark, out of sight. And that is exactly what holds the tree when the wind comes. If this kind of reflection is helping you understand your own journey, subscribe to the channel. The goal here isn't to feed illusions, but to give language to phases of faith that almost no one describes honestly. What looks like a loss of intensity may actually be a gain of depth. Maybe you're not growing colder, maybe you're growing. In the end, faith rarely stays the way it looked at the beginning. At first, many people associate faith with strong experiences, remarkable moments, clear sensations of presence, and answers that seem quick and direct. These phases exist, and they can be important. They awaken, encourage, and give momentum. But they are not the foundation that sustains a lifetime. Over time, something changes. The sensations decrease. Emotional certainties become less frequent. Answers stop being immediate. And at that point, many people think they are losing faith, when in reality they are being invited to redefine it. Faith is not having emotional guarantees. It is continuing without them. It is praying when prayer feels simple and dry. It is obeying when there is no sense of confirmation. It is holding your direction when you can't interpret what is happening. There is no shine in that. It's not intense. It doesn't make for enthusiastic stories, but it is solid. Because when faith no longer depends on what you feel, it begins to rest on something deeper than emotion. It is sustained by decision, by conviction built over time, by a bond that does not need constant stimulation to remain real. Remaining when you feel nothing is not a sign of spiritual failure. Often, it is the clearest sign that faith has stopped being based on immediate return. Silence then takes on a different meaning. It is not automatically absence, not proof of rejection, not the end of the relationship. It is the environment where it becomes clear what your faith is really built on. If it depended on feelings, silence feels like destruction. If it depended on quick answers, silence feels like abandonment. But if it begins to root itself in the decision to remain, silence does not destroy, it deepens. It reveals that faith was not just passing enthusiasm. It was a real bond. Faith is continuing without understanding, continuing without seeing, continuing without feeling much of anything, and still not turning your back. Not because it's easy, but because, at some point, the relationship became more important than the experience. That doesn't remove the weight of waiting. It doesn't make doubt comfortable. It doesn't make silence painless. But it gives dignity to the journey. You don't need constant euphoria to be on the right path. You don't need to feel intensity all the time for your faith to be real. And you don't need emotional guarantees to keep going. In the end, faith is not sustained intensity. It is sustained faithfulness. And often it is precisely when nothing seems to reinforce your belief that its real depth finally appears. Quiet, firm, and real.